Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Horizon Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Saj Survey, and I will be your worship associate this morning. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm joined by our worship leader, the Reverend Chris Rothbauer, whose pronouns are they, them, their. We are so excited to welcome you to our worship service this daylight savings morning. We're so glad to have you with us here today, whether you're joining in person or virtually, whether you're here for the first time or whether you've been here for longer than you can remember. Here at Horizon, we welcome people of all faiths and of no faith in particular. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are in your journey, you are welcome among us. Please be our guest after the service for coffee and conversation in the fellowship hall across the way. Today is Potluck Sunday, and you are invited to eat with us in the fellowship hall, even if you didn't bring a dish. As a community, we are also welcoming of the sharing of joys and sorrows and concerns. You're welcome to fill out a joys and sorrows slip. Those are available on the table near the Welcome Center, in the pockets of the chairs in front of you, and on the Joys and Sorrows table in front of me here in the sanctuary. Or you are welcome to light a candle for any reason. This can be done at any time before the service or in service from the beginning through the Offertory. I'm going to invite Kent Darwin up for an announcement regarding the beautiful artwork in our sanctuary.
Good morning. Today ends a delightful exhibit that we've had extended by KB Leibland. She's here today, and I'd like for her to stand so you can see. KB has already sold several pieces, and others are being considered. So after the service, she will be at the back table of the sanctuary to go through the purchase processes. And thank you very much for enjoying her exhibit, and see you later.
Thank you, Kent. As we prepare for our service this morning, please take a moment to set your cell phone or other electronic devices to worship mode.
Our call to worship this morning is from Gretchen Haley. The shadowed silhouettes of two people holding their hands together to form a heart. Every little thing that breaks your heart is welcome here. We'll make a space for it, give it its due time and praise for the wanting it represents, the longing for something more, some healing hope that remains not yet. We promise no magic, no making it all better, but offer only this circle of trust, this human community that remembers, though imperfectly, that sings in praise, though sometimes awkwardly, that this gathering that loves, though not yet enough. We're still practicing, after all, still learning, still in need of help and partners, still becoming able to receive all this beauty and all these gifts we can bring. Come, let us worship together.
Our chalice lighting this morning is from Shari Woodbury. Spark of the Spirit, cupped in earth's embrace, light of love alive in all creation. As we kindle this flame, we rekindle our connection to the sacred web of life. Please join me in our affirmation, which is printed in the back of your order of service and also projected on the screen behind me. Love is the doctrine of our church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in harmony with the earth. Thus do we covenant together. I invite you to rise in body and spirit and join us in singing our opening hymn, number 1060 in the Teal hymnal, as we sing of hope and joy.
About our MetroCrest collection. Horizon works to make a difference in our local community, and one of the ways we do this is by collecting shelf-stable foods and personal care items for the pantry at MetroCrest services. You can drop off your donations each Sunday in the label baskets in the lobby over by Fellowship Hall or in the basket here. And now for the story.
We have a parable today. A parable is a story that tells a lesson. See if you can figure out what the lesson is. The story is called Lost in the Desert. And like many parables, we don't really know who the author of this one is. Once a man got lost in the desert. The water in his flask had run out 2 days ago, and he was on his last legs. Oh, he knew that if he didn't get some water soon, he would surely die. The man saw a small hut ahead of him. He thought it might be a mirage or maybe a hallucination. But having no other option, he moved toward it. As he got closer, he realized it was quite real. So he dragged his tired body to the door with his last bit of strength. The hut was not occupied and seemed like it had been abandoned for quite some time. The man entered into it, hoping against hope that he might find water inside. His heart skipped a beat when he saw what was in the hut. A hand pump. It had a pipe going down through the floor, perhaps tapping a source of water deep underground. He began working the hand pump, but no water came out. He kept at it, and nothing happened. Finally, he gave up from exhaustion and frustration. He threw his hands up in despair. It looked as if he was going to die after all. Then the man noticed a bottle in the corner of the hut. It was filled with water and corked up to prevent evaporation. He uncorked the bottle and was about to gulp down the sweet, life-giving water when he noticed a piece of paper attached to it. Handwriting on the paper said, "Use this water to start the pump, and don't forget to fill the bottle when you're done." He had a dilemma. He could follow the instructions and pour the water from the bottle into the pump, or he could ignore it and just drink the water. What to do? If he let the water go into the pump, how did he know it would work? What if the pump malfunctioned? What if the pipe had a leak? What if the underground reservoir had long since dried up? But then, maybe the instructions were correct. Should he risk it? If it turned out to be false, he would be throwing away the last water he would ever see. Hands trembling, he poured the water into the pump, and then he closed his eyes and said a prayer and started working the pump. He heard a gurgling sound, and then water came gushing out, more than he could possibly use. He luxuriated in the cool and refreshing stream. He was going to live. After drinking his fill, he was feeling much better. He looked around the hut and he found all kinds of cast-off things, pencils, papers, and a faded map of the region. The map showed that he was still far away from civilization, but at least now he knew where he was and which direction to go. He filled his flask for the journey ahead. He also refilled the bottle and put the cork back in. Before leaving the hut, he added his own writing below the instructions. "Believe me, it works." In a moment, we will be dismissing the children to their classrooms and invite anyone who is seated in the sanctuary to come in, or if you're in Fellowship Hall, to come in, take a seat. We're pretty full today. That's wonderful. And you're welcome to move forward if you would like to get closer, and leave room on the ends for anybody who wants to come more forward. So at this time, let's sing the children out to their classrooms.
This religious community exists by its mission, as a fire exists by its burning. But a fire cannot burn without fuel. And it is the time, the energy, the imagination, the vision, the creativity, the compassion, the love, and yes, the financial support of the members and friends of this community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community that transforms lives and serves the world. Your support, the free and generous support of each and every member and friend of this community, is what fuels this community and its mission. Without your support, the flame of justice, community, and love cannot burn. It cannot burn brightly to warm ourselves, and it cannot burn to be a beacon in the world threatened by division and fear. Thank you to our members and friends who give and pledge electronically. If you would like to give electronically, you may do so on the Breeze app or online at horizonuu.org/donate. The offering will now be joyfully given and received. Thank you for your generosity. A reading from Thomas R. Smith. It's like so many other things in life to which you must say no or yes. So you take your car to the new mechanic. Sometimes the best thing to do is trust. The package left with the disreputable-looking clerk, the check gulped by the night deposit, the envelope passed by dozens of strangers, all show up to their intended destinations. The theft that could have happened doesn't. Wind finally gets where it is going, through the snowy trees and the river. Even when frozen, it arrives at the right place. And sometimes you sense how faithfully your life is delivered, even though you can't read the address.
For 4 years, I went to ministers' retreats at The Mountain, a Unitarian Universalist owned and operated retreat center in Highlands, North Carolina, just along the state border with Georgia and about an hour from the Blue Ridge Mountains. Some of you, if you're involved in children and youth work, might have heard of it because they host a ton of retreats for children, youth, and adults, especially in the spring and summer months. But it's a hard place to get to unless you can drive, since the nearest airports are almost 2 hours away in Atlanta and Asheville, and neither city offers regular ground transportation to the area. It's kind of tucked in the middle of nowhere, off the beaten path, a place you won't come across on an interstate or a main road. Now, the summer of 2020, after the COVID pandemic had shut down most everything around us, Calvin and I were feeling a little stir-crazy, since most of the things we enjoyed doing were now out of the question. On a whim, I called the staff at the Mountain and asked if they would be willing to rent out a cabin for a personal retreat for the two of us, our dog and our cat. And to our delight, they said they would love to. And so in July of that year, we spent a week in the Mountain. It was a time we both enjoyed, and as usual, the beauty of the region didn't disappoint, with stunning vistas and waterfalls and green trees as far as the eye could see. There is a sense of awe to it, of feeling like I was being held in something bigger than myself. I think the Celts call it a thin place, somewhere I can catch a glimpse of the sacred and feel there is more underlying the world than my ordinary existence. There is much more than meets the eye. But one night, a thunderstorm moved through. Now, if you've never been on a mountain during a storm, let me tell you, it can be a surreal experience, and it can feel like the mountain itself is crumbling every time thunder shakes it. Our dog and our cat, unused to such ferocious storms, hid in the bedroom with us and didn't want to come out until they were sure it was over. And indeed, it was uncanny that a place that seemed like it could be home to the gods had transformed itself into a scene of violent struggle in nature. And the feeling wasn't completely unfounded, since a lightning strike or flood at the wrong place and time could leave us stranded, as recently happened to another retreat group as they found themselves stuck on the mountain after Hurricane Helen. But the other thing about mountain storms is that, yes, they're ferocious, but they're also short. It seemed like just as I was getting used to the onslaught of thunder and lightning, it died down to a mere trickle of rain. What previously seemed to be out of control was now a sense of peace as the storm passed and the thin places opened up again. Things returned to normal, and we had a pretty nice, if uneventful, trip afterwards. It's a shock to the system that somewhere so magical, so awe-inspiring can be transformed into a fearful spectacle that threatens the feeling of security I spend so much energy cultivating and yet take so much for granted until it's gone. There's a theme in 20th century Unitarianism. You see, the rapid advances in science and technology had led many of our spiritual ancestors to speculate that we were on the verge of a golden age, that soon new discoveries would lead to the end of poverty, oppression, and economic inequality. These Unitarians put a lot of faith and trust in human ingenuity and science, that the trajectory of the universe was onward and upward forever, a direct influence of the humanism that offered optimism for the human condition to so many of our members. But World War II was a huge setback for this sort of humanism. The twin horrors of the Holocaust and the atomic bomb showed that human ingenuity, while it could truly be a blessing to the world, could also perpetuate unspeakable horrors. This continues today as scientific discoveries are used to perpetuate violence against people in the wider world, and climate change becomes a very serious threat to ours and many other species. For many, this is why they can't believe in omnibenevolence, a world of unconditional love. In a decade of ministry, I've heard many Unitarian Universalists express a sort of nihilism in the universe, that the world doesn't care whether we live or die. It simply is an amoral blob that just exists to exist, and anything more is just the fanciful imaginations of over-romantic humans who desperately want to believe that there is more to the world than just the present. And in a sense, I think they have a little bit of a point. I'm not naive enough to believe that the world has some special for me. I'm a firm believer that meaning is not inherent in the universe, but is created every time I find reason to keep living in an uncertain world. But I also think it's more complicated than simply assuming that the universe is anthropomorphic or not. The universe may not be thinking of me, but that doesn't mean I'm not a part of it. That doesn't mean it doesn't matter whether the human species lives or dies. And after all, as in our first reading this morning, sometimes, despite it all, things do turn out all right. Sometimes the storms do pass and the sun comes back out, and it's like we can feel the holy right at our fingertips. But what does it mean to have faith in a universe that isn't always kind? What would it be like to develop an ethic that not only sees our actions as mattering in the universe, but as essential to the fabric of all existence? Is there a middle ground between nihilism and believing the world exists for us to be happy? And what would it be like to believe again that the universe is essentially good despite it all? I'd like to invite you to sing with me our Doxology. You'll find the words projected on the screen. We now take time to honor the sorrows and joys of this community, knowing that what affects one affects us all. The Radical Welcome Task Force would like us to take a moment to remember Jimmy Lee Jackson this week, an African-American man who took action for justice by peacefully protesting for voters' rights on February 18, 1965, whereupon he was beaten and shot by an Alabama state trooper. Jimmy Lee Jackson's killing led to righteous outrage that fueled the march from Selma to Montgomery. And in the midst of this march, we experienced two Unitarian Universalist martyrs, the Reverend James Reeb, who marched on March 9th, 1965, 60 years ago today. That evening after the march, Reverend Reeb was attacked and killed by white supremacists and died 2 days later. And Viola Liuzzo, a Unitarian Universalist lay leader and mother of five from Detroit, was transporting people back from Selma to Montgomery when her car was ran off the road and she was killed by members of the Ku Klux Klan on March 25th. We remember these martyrs who took action as we face our own calls for justice here and now in Carrollton for transgender people, immigrants, and other groups marginalized and facing discrimination and threats. May we answer the call. We celebrate International Women's Day and the power of all women to heal the world. A sorrow from Elaine McMillan. My sister died yesterday. And an anonymous sorrow. My kidneys are failing and I'm terrified to tell my family. And we light a candle this morning to honor all the joys and sorrows which have gone unspoken and reside only in our hearts. Please join me in the spirit of prayer or meditation in whatever way feels right with these words from Gretchen Haley. It will be followed by a space of silence, which will be broken by our responsive hymn, number 184 in the gray hymnal, Be Ye Lamps Unto Yourselves. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? In these days, we find ourselves too often stuck with these questions on repeat. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? We grasp at signs and markers, articles of news and analysis, Facebook memes and forwarded emails as if the new zodiac, capable of forecasting all that life may yet bring our way, as if we could prepare, as if life had ever made any promises of making sense or turning out the way we thought, as if we are not also actors in this still unfolding story. For this hour we gather to surrender to the mystery, to release ourselves from the needing to know, the yearning to have it all already figured out, and also the burden of believing we either have all the control or none. Here in our song and our silence, our stories and our sharing, we make space for a new breath, a new healing, a new possibility to take root that is courage forged in the fire of our coming together and felt in the spirit that comes alive in this act of faith, that we believe still a new world is possible, that we are creating it already here and now. Blessed be.
A reading from Rosemary, Wahtola, Trommer. Now, since I've tasted trust in life, why would I ever slip again into error? The armor of an insincere smile, sometimes as dangerous as the armor of a sword. Why would I ever try to know what to say, how to act, how to plan, when? With zero effort of my own, love itself will move through me, will rise up in me to meet itself. Of course, like the child I am, I forget this trust. I slip back into habit, believe I need protection, fear I am isolated. But I have fallen in love with life at a time when that might seem impossible. And this strange fact alone seems enough to remind me that to ditch the armor, to cast my arms wide, to unsheath my heart and say, yes, I love you, life. I trust you. I serve you. Why would I not trust life? It would be like a seed evading the rain, like a sunflower just unfurling, trying to avoid the sun.
If you've ever studied basic Christian theology, you'll know that one of the problems for any religion that posits an all-powerful, all-knowing, all-good, and all-present God is how to explain the problem of evil. It essentially asks how we resolve the idea that an all-loving God with the power and knowledge to stop suffering would allow such pain to happen to the creations that God supposedly loves. It's a major part of Christian thought to create answers to the problems of evil known as theodicies that attempt to explain this paradox and allow for people to keep the faith in a broken universe. Now, for myself, I've never heard a theodicy that adequately answers the question. Inevitably, they usually lead to more questions. For example, one of the most popular I studied in my philosophy of religion class was that this world, this one that we're living in, is the best of all possible worlds. In other words, this was the best God could do. And it doesn't address the issue so much as sidestep it, since one now needs to answer the question, why is this the best of all universes? This world where things like malaria and tapeworms exist, where there is so much suffering and evil, the best of all possible worlds? It really doesn't make sense, even from a Christian perspective. But the idea of theodicy takes on a different meaning when I think of how my friend, the Druid John Beckett, answered the question during a workshop at Mystic South on pagan metaphysics. John said he's often hesitant to address the question altogether because he doesn't think it's particularly relevant to the pagan worldview, since few pagans believe there is an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, and omnipresent God. He nevertheless attempts an answer because so many people in the pagan community today were raised in some sort of Christianity and still have that big problem floating in the forefront of their minds. And John's answer is this: suffering happens because humans are not the center of the universe. It seems a flippant answer at first, but the more I think about it, the more I'm inclined to adopt it for myself. It's not nihilistic, but it's also not human-centric. Its logic basically says that everything that happens around us isn't personal. This rain this morning that got me wet as I was on my way here, that wasn't some divine retribution. And even the things that seem personal aren't because the universe hates you. Thank goodness for that after the flooding of the church a few weeks ago. It just is, existing in its own set of laws with life that has evolved to survive long-term, but not always short-term, on a relatively tiny planet that revolves around a little larger star called the sun in a universe that none of us can even fathom the depths of. Inherently, the universe isn't good or bad. It just is. Those are labels we project onto it. Here's the thing: the kind of trust in the universe I'm proposing isn't one that denies or downplays the idea that bad things happen to good people, and yes, good things happen to bad people. It's one that recognizes that stuff sometimes happens for no particular reason, and what else can we do but go on? However, as a species, we're hardwired to survive. Our genes want to propagate the human race for millennia into the future. If we can learn to live with the earth and within the laws she abides by, while also building sustainable human community, we aren't guaranteed happiness or survival, but I'm convinced it's the only way we'll ever achieve them. As Rosemary, Wahtola, Trommer says in our second reading this morning, sometimes we will face difficulties, but putting on armor against the world might actually be counterproductive. After all, can you think of a time when you put on a mask to other people that kept you from being able to fully connect with them? I know I can. And just so, it's possible to put on armor, as Trommer puts it, and try to avoid the difficulties of living in the world. But we could become hermits, move to the top of a mountain away from all humans, and still we won't be able to avoid whatever Mother Nature has to offer. More than one hermit has been killed in an avalanche on the top of their solitary mountain. Instead, we'll just be denying ourselves the opportunity to find meaning in what is. I knew a guy in high school who enjoyed storm chasing. If any of you enjoy it, I won't put you down, but it's a hobby I don't particularly understand. But it's a topic that seems relevant, given my story at the mountain, as well as the storms around North Texas last week. Storms can be incredibly destructive, and I wouldn't recommend pursuing them without knowing what you're doing. He had been through so much training and shadowed so many people. But this guy could tell you all about the beautiful but terrible power of various storms. There is a sort of awe in it, in being able to recognize that there is some logic in tornadoes and hurricanes. They only seem destructive to humans because of their effects on our lives, but they aren't consciously trying to harm us. When I can see both the beautiful and the destructive in a thing, it makes me realize how fragile this whole human experiment is. But it also makes me realize how much the world isn't out to get me. It might still kill me one day. I was thinking this week about the Australian zookeeper Steve Irwin, whose love of dangerous animals eventually took his life. Yet I'm not sure he'd have done it any other way, to the point his children are now carrying on his legacy, because there's something awe-inspiring about this world that calls people to embrace it, even when it's dangerous. Most of us don't chase storms or handle venomous animals, but I have heard so many people of various religious beliefs say that witnessing the power of nature is their spirituality. There is a power in it that leads me to drop my defenses and embrace the fact that I'm part of something larger than myself, to trust that even if it kills me, there's no ill will involved. I'm still cool with the world. And this embrace of the many faces of nature can help me trust life, because it reminds me I have a place in it, even if my destiny isn't guaranteed. As Trommer put it, why would I not trust life? It would be like a seed evading the rain, like a sunflower just unfurling, trying to avoid the sun. We need the world. There is no other alternative except to die. The world has everything we need to live, and to not at least give it a try, that seems like the true nihilism to me. I don't pretend my theology is completely comforting. I would not give it to someone who had just lost their house in a tornado. So many people look for dogmas that tell them everything will be okay to avoid uncertainty. And that's something I can't offer any of you. But what I can offer is that we belong to a universe that we are, each minute, an intimate part of. And for a species that craves belonging like humans do, that's incredible. As I see it, we're here and whether you believe there's a cosmic reason behind it or not, the ultimate question each religious tradition must answer is the poet Mary Oliver's famous question: what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I could hide knowing how painful life can be, or I can go out and try to make a life in this universe I belong to. As a country song once said, I could have missed the pain, but I'd have had to miss the dance. Like each of you, occasionally I'm going to be overwhelmed and need to retreat as well, because the world can be overwhelming. But I'm convinced that if we can keep an open orientation to the world, I can find meaning even in the midst of life's storms. And this is a lesson that carries over to the many facets of my life. May we be open to what the universe has to offer, because it's not always what we want, but it's often very good. May it be so. Before we close, I'd like to invite Marty Worthheim up for a special announcement.
Well, I haven't been up here since my bar mitzvah. So my name is Marty Worthheim. I am on the stewardship committee, and Laura needed a sub for today because she thought that her son was going to be in a tennis match. Turns out it got rained out. So she asked me to come up here. Actually, what happened is she said, hey, Marty, you've got cancer. Get up there, maybe people feel sorry for you. So stewardship campaign is going well, but it's going slowly. So we've got 74 pledges in, and 60% of those increased from last year. So that's really good news, okay? But a lot of members haven't made their pledge yet. And that is at least partially our fault. We didn't communicate clearly enough that if you made a pledge any time in 2024, even as late as December, we need you to pledge again, okay? That word, we did that, cover that in our FAQs, okay? But then we realized this week that if you don't think you need to pledge, you're probably not going to look at the FAQs, right? Genius, okay? So am I asking you to just get out there and do your pledge? No, I'm not, okay? So what I want you to do is carve an hour or two out of your afternoon schedule, okay? Cowboys aren't playing, so I know you got plenty of time, okay? So during that time, think about what brought you here this morning. Think about what's bringing you here regularly every Sunday. Even think about what brought you to Horizon in the first place, okay? Talk about it with your family, your kids. Kids should be in that discussion. Okay. Now, next thing I want you to do is go to your email trash folder and find a Horizon newsletter. Find a newsletter somewhere between late January and early February. You only need one, okay? And go in there and you'll see a click here to read Horizon stories. Go read those. If you've read them again, okay? You're going to find a lot of inspiration in those stories. People telling you why Horizon is important to them. There's more. Next thing, I want you to go to YouTube and go back and view the service on February 16th. And especially listen to Chris's message about pledging and generosity. And also think about the pulpit testimonials. You don't have to remember the details. Just remember how they made you feel, okay? And, think about your own Horizon story. Then, and only then, I want you to submit your pledge, okay? Get your pledge in, and if you can, join the 60% who have increased their pledge. And about that cancer thing, I got a scan back yesterday, and I am winning that battle. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Marty. We extinguish this flame, but not our commitment to welcome radically, love boldly, grow spiritually, and serve courageously. This we do because we envision a beloved community filled with compassion, helping all to thrive in a just world. I would like to invite you to rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our closing hymn, hymn number 95 in the gray hymnal, There is More Love Somewhere.
Benediction is by Scott Taylor. Go with faith, not the kind that is called to move mountains, but the quieter sort that calls us to take the first step, even with the whole staircase sits beyond our view. As we stride towards the unseen, may we notice that the way unfolds only as we risk traveling it, and may we remember and trust that none of these steps are ones we take alone. Before we sing one more verse, we take the fire within us and share it with others as we go. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace.